Cornelius Hiddle. I bet you're impressed I figured out your middle name.
Well, yeah, where'd you get that from?
Your Auntie Dorothy. Your Auntie Dorothy told me. I reached out to her, third connection on LinkedIn, and said, "Tell me something about your boy Zach." And
she leaked it.
Middle name Cornelius. She nailed it.
Now we all know.
Now we all know. Yeah, the Ray and Adam show is just going to be the Adam show today. Razor had a conflict today, so it'll be nice. I can finally get a word in edgewise, which will be sweet. So it'll be good. Also, a couple little housekeeping issues. Housekeeping issues, some updates. Had a pretty nice weekend, I think, everybody. It seemed like a lot of people made a bunch of money. Mine sounded like they took a little bit of a beating from the fellas. And it was a good weekend. How did you do this weekend, Mr. Hiddle?
Oh, this weekend was excellent. Absolutely excellent. It was easily 25 units. I mean, it was a monster.
Yeah, it was a fun weekend. It's fun when we're all rolling and you can just feel it. Like everybody's just cooking, and you get that momentum as a group, and it starts to feed off itself. It was a good weekend for sure. And of course, last night kickoff hockey. About time. Some of us
loved that game. That first game was awesome.
Tell us your story last night. You were doing it with one hand tied behind your back, but you still made a bunch of money.
Oh yeah. So I run this bowling league on Tuesday nights. It's a long season. It's a lot of freaking work, but the opportunity I saw, my teammates are telling me, "Hey, you got to go bowl," and I'm on my phone trying to shop the books for the best number. And I find one, and I'm like, hold on, it's going to open back up. It's going to commercial break. It opens up, and I fire the bullet.
There's nothing better than when our skeptical friends see the light. They go, "Oh, wait a sec, there might be something here."
And a lot of times they'll write it off. Oh yeah, it's charmed, you're lucky. Somehow you just always win. I don't know if anybody else in here kind of gets that, but people do like to write it off sometimes like that. And I mean, there is a little bit of luck involved, but over time, we try to get that out.
Yeah, for sure. Now let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about your philosophy as a sports bettor. You're big on data. Hey, you were the first guy in the group to start calling out sack numbers and things like that. Things that are maybe off the radar for a lot of people, but you've made this a core part of your business. Talk about that. How did you come to sort of gravitate towards that? And then maybe talk a little bit about your process on how you come to the decisions you do.
And what you start to find is that books that are offering markets that other books aren't, they don't have something to benchmark against as well. So the opportunity for you to find some sort of expected value in a line increases exponentially. I mean, there will be mistakes, 100%. Major markets, since every book offers a major market, you're less likely to find expected value in that area. We obviously have some stuff for NHL that actually works there, really good, but we won't touch on that too much. I think everybody knows that strategy is still kind of unfolding. Initially it was extremely successful for me, and that's when I brought it kind of into the chat during some of our live streams. And obviously then once you start to expose it cools off, right? And a lot of them have been missed by a half type stuff, and just still trying to figure out exactly where the sweet spot is there, and some of the tendencies of certain teams can really influence that.
How do you study the tendencies? I mean, maybe just for a second, let's go over what we talked about before the call about the way that you created some software and using some Excel spreadsheets to organize data for hockey, and then give us all the stats that we need to make all those instant decisions that we make. We'll come back to football in a minute, but let's just talk about your process there. How did that all come to be? You and Pacer were talking, and you said something. Let's give this a shot. Is that kind of the start of it?
Yeah, exactly. We actually just hopped on. I think we were just on Messenger and just hopped on a couple calls, and we're like, it'd be kind of cool if we could do this and make this number, kind of auto populate, or figure out a way to find some data that's not necessarily exposed in a box score. And we find some of that data and, pump it into a spreadsheet, and, call out here to Coulter. Coulter has helped out a lot in that realm, like basically got the train going on that. And then I started to, basically lay some more track for it to be able to go, we can go further with this. We can make it a little bit more automatic, so that we're not leaving this up to being some sort of daily task that we don't really want to do, because we don't know if it's providing value. But then, when it started auto populating, we started getting real data for the season, and then it was clicking really, really good. Anybody that was here will definitely know that.
Well, it just made it, like, I don't want to say idiot proof, but almost, right? Like you had there your fair market numbers, like all these different things, and was posted every day. So we knew exactly what to look for and what numbers to look for. It's absolutely brilliant, and done like that. Like it's fantastic.
Yeah, having a cheat sheet is like extremely useful for probably any of this type of value wagering that we're looking at.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes you just need to be talked off the ledge. Like you have the eye test. Oh, I love this. But then you can have numbers that can help reinforce that. And if it does, like, you want that wager now. If the numbers don't really support what you're seeing, maybe it's not a bet, or maybe you don't risk as much on it. And just having the cheat sheet, being able to look at it real quick and go, no, this is probably no bet. You don't have to take every wager. Yes, there's always an outcome that wins, but you don't have to take every wager.
Right. As you say, cheat sheet, like I would have your, like those numbers, I'd have them on my computer somewhere. But as you said it, I actually think it would be more efficient to just print them off and have it next to me. One less thing to open. Like, it's one of the few things that you can use with paper. I'm going to make a little note. I'm going to do that. Once you get that data cooking, I'm going to start to do that. I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah, I actually do print it off. It definitely,
yeah.
It's a little bit of work to sometimes get it to all fit on one piece of paper or whatever. But it's worth the effort, because then you have a slate of games. There's 12 games on or whatever, and you're scrambling, trying to make sure you're logged into your books. You don't need another window.
Totally. Yeah, no, it's a great call. So back to football. What types of data are you using? Because, like, what do? Do you ever do things pregame? Is it always at a certain time? How do you go about that?
It's got to pass the eye test first. So that's one where there's just so much data that you could try to kind of filter out ahead of time that won't end up meaning anything. So I don't really waste any time on that. I think that maybe there is an opportunity for that, but there'd be a lot of upfront work. So, if it passes the eye test, then you start to dig into that team, try to make sure that the game script matches what you're trying to bet, and then see, are they still going to try? And sometimes there's an injury, which presents, excellent opportunities, obviously, in an unfortunate situation for somebody else. But it's really, it all starts at the eye test. You got to watch football. I've watched a lot of football. I watch all the games every week.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can pay for the NFL.com thing, go back and watch replays and kind of see for yourself if you didn't watch the game live, and maybe get an understanding of why that bet was good or bad, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's are you a fantasy football guy, Zach? Or were you before inplayLIVE?
Yeah, and this is my mentality for it. I hate it. I'm in a group where we have a shame trophy, whatever you want to call it, where basically you just don't want to be last.
Right.
And so the journey of the season is to not be the worst. If you're last place, everybody gets to come back next season and deliver a pie in your face. So the moment when you're fighting for last place, it gets a little serious. But up until then, I don't really care. I just kind of wing it, and it doesn't really influence anything that I do with betting.
Right. One of the things that Charmy and I were doing last week we were just looking at first half and second half numbers, trying to figure out, like, should we lock it in pregame, at halftime, first, like, when do you lock in? But the other thing that we started to look at was like a lot of the fantasy football sites, they will tell you the strength of the matchup. So they'll show like Baltimore, for example. Baltimore was ranked 31st against tight end production. So in other words, tight ends should do really, really well. Now, that didn't turn out to be the case. Doyle had nothing, and Ali Cox had a little bit, but like the data was very, like, it looked really good for the tight ends to outperform a little bit. And you can go in and you can look at, you know, how do running backs perform against this team? Not like beyond, is it just rushing yards or receiving yards? Like, who performs against this defense? Who's putting up numbers? Who's doing things like that? There's just data everywhere. And I love the fact that you go back to the eye test with it all, because otherwise you could just be a slave to the data, couldn't you?
Yeah. Yeah. The data is definitely interesting. And the fantasy side of it, like you touched on there, I actually do use that with Yahoo provides really, really good data there. And I think you actually have to be in a league though. So it's kind of hard to get to the data if you're not in a fantasy league, but yeah, you can definitely use that. And it's a lot quicker to jump around and see, well, what are their stats for the season? And then what about the most recent 4 games? What about home games? What about away games? And then just to see a game log, like it's easy. And I'm like, well, this is just for fantasy. I can't, there should be sites out there for prop wagering that provide this kind of insight.
Totally. Yeah. Outside of prop bets, Zach, where do you make the most money? Like, what strategies have been kind of, what's your favorite? Because really interesting as we go through this, the strategy that makes somebody the most money and their favorite aren't necessarily the same thing. So I'm curious on you, like, which strategy do you use that has made you the most money outside of the player props? And then what's your favorite?
Yeah. Let's see. So I think my favorite wager, and it all just goes back to, I really like to watch football, is a team down 6, getting the ball with 2 minutes left. I don't care what the number is. I love wagering that. You can get some
like just the comeback,
freaking good numbers. Yes, the comeback, specifically down 6, is phenomenal. I love that wager. That's one where you click the button, you put your wager in, and then you're like, all right, here we go, and you buckle up.
There we go.
And then there's an interception on the first play, and you're like, well, fuck this.
Yeah.
But I love placing those wagers. I don't. It's definitely not the most profitable wager for me.
Sure.
I think in terms of time spent, it would definitely be our NHL strategies.
Yeah, and so with the NHL strategies, would that be your most profitable area, do you think?
Per wager, 100%. Like, there is absolutely no doubt. And I came into this program not even, I didn't watch hockey. I didn't know anything about wagering on hockey. And that's right. My most profitable betting right there. And maybe that's an attribution to not knowing it. You know, like Kenny doesn't know team names. Like, I didn't know them either. But I'm biased.
In terms of player props, like, some people, they can just look at every game and look at every opportunity as a unique one. Some people look to certain players as people that they consistently really like to bet on, or like if you see a player trending upwards, like Dawson Knox for this team called the Buffalo Bills, he's been just like every week better than the last. Do you follow trends? Do you have certain guys that you follow? My favorite, and I actually don't think I've ever lost this bet, is as long as they're tied or leading at halftime, betting on Chubb to go over his second half rushing line. Honest to God, I don't think I've ever lost that bet. It is as close to an auto as I've ever seen. And they're actually moving his number up now. Used to be that he'd only need about 40 yards in the second half. And last week they put it at 60 and he still blew it out of the waters. That's one of my favorites, like just in terms of a certain player knowing something. Do you have some players that you kind of lock onto?
No, I don't, but thanks for that insight there. It's interesting that specific player is so consistently hitting and breaking the expectation, when Kareem Hunt is also there and breaking the expectation for himself as well. Because you could look at Kareem's number and he's probably doing just as well as Chubb in terms of, breaking the book.
Yeah, it's the difference though. What I've found is that they use Hunt a lot more in games where they're trailing or they really need to score, just because it opens up the passing game a little bit more, and he's a better receiver than Chubb is. But if it's we got to put this one to bed, it's Chubb City. It's just they just
Yeah. So I guess maybe Hughes check for the 49ers. He's a player that I think most of us hit pretty freaking good a couple weeks ago. But he's one where that offense, they try to get him the ball, and it's almost like they're paying, like he paid his dues for being a fullback and always leading the way for a team that runs the ball,
right,
and they get him touches, but they throw it to him. They hardly ever actually hand it off to him, and so it's like it's such a counterintuitive bet. But the books post his number, and you gotta take it because usually it's one catch. And if you go look at his history, like they will force him to get a catch every single game. It's not about if he's open, they're going to get him the ball.
They're just going to get him one. Yeah, one or two. That's pretty neat too. Yeah. What strategy are you most keen on learning moving forward? Like this thing has been such an evolution, just in general at a high level, but I would also say that it's, there's been a lot of personal evolution along the way. Everybody's sort of on this journey, and, there's maybe a couple guys that have, almost every sport covered and every strategy covered, but most people are still kind of adding those bullets to their gun. What's the one that you're really looking forward to adding to your repertoire?
Yeah. So I really want to be able to get better at NBA, because those numbers can pay so good, and there's just so much data in NBA as well that I think we could really leverage that. And I didn't make those plays a lot last season. It all comes down to balancing your time and effort. And I just didn't, I don't do this full time. This is a part-time thing for me. I still have a 9 to 5 and I have other commitments. So basketball's on every day. It's easy for me to say Saturday and Sunday are booked, but once basketball starts up, it gets tricky, because then every single day it doesn't stop.
You're one of the few guys whose day job actually really, really helps you with your side hustle. Hey, and maybe we should talk about that. I don't know if we mentioned it, but what do you do for a living, Zach?
Yeah, so I went to Colorado State University. I live in Fort Collins, and I went there to learn software engineering, and got a computer science degree and got a job being a software engineer right out of school, and stayed in town, and I've loved it ever since. I've had 2 different jobs. It pays well. I basically, you could describe it like I'm just going to work to solve puzzles all day, and sometimes it takes me 30 minutes to solve the puzzle, and sometimes it takes 3 weeks. You just never know what you're going to get, and I'm engaged, so I love it. And that can definitely contribute to helping me make decisions in the sports betting world, because I can also help, I can like write code to go process some data or collect data or auto populate a spreadsheet or whatever it is, right?
Yeah. One of the things that people really struggle with, Zach, is like when they're ramping up their unit price or sort of cracking that next earnings barrier, or any of those things, and I think a lot of that is almost certainly fear-based. You're afraid that maybe this isn't real. Maybe you're afraid of success, like whatever the fear is, like people just have that something holding them back. But because you rely on the data so much, do you think you're able to be more, what would the word be, unemotional about it, or detached from the emotion of your wager? Like, because you're relying so much on the data and the eye test, is it sort of automatic? Like, if this and this happens, I pull the trigger without an ounce of emotion?
No, you would think so, but no.
You still got the emotion.
If you don't have emotion in this, you ain't having fun. If you're not having fun, you're not 100% in. That's the way I look at it. I have a lot of fun doing this, man. But yeah,
Is
logically,
it fun first for you?
you think that that's true though, right? It would make sense that if it was just data, I might as well just write a program to place the bet for me. And I'll just wake up in the morning and see if it won, right?
Hang on a sec. Pacer, I got to write this down. That actually sounds pretty sweet. You'd save a lot of marriages maybe doing that.
Yeah, I don't think the books would like that. You'll probably get shut down pretty quick. But you actually hit a very interesting discussion point there, and I don't know if we want to talk about it too much, but I'll kind of lean into it a bit here. Is starting this program, the bankroll management and unit sizes, it is so freaking hard to figure out. And I know like there's not a one size fits all. There's different types of wagers. There's different markets. There's different sports. There's things that you're watching. There's things that you're not watching. You have maybe 5 different books with different balances. What's my unit size? How much do I put on this team to score a touchdown right now? And it's like a split-second decision, right? And if you place a bet and you immediately look at your balance up in the top right of the window or whatever to see if the money came out, you're betting too much. 100%. And I remember when I first opened some books, I'm like, oh, did it take my money out? Like, I was probably wagering too much. And now, obviously, you need to be conscious of your balance for that book and adjust your unit size accordingly based on success. But just a tip to anybody that's beginning, if you look at your balance right after placing a bet because you want to know if that money was taken out, you're wagering too much money.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah,
that's a really good point. Yeah, that's a really good. I mean, I say it a little bit of a different way. Like if you're, what I say is that if you're wagering enough, or if you're wagering an amount of money that actually has an impact on your life, then it's definitely too much. Either way, like unless you hit like a 100 to 1 shot or something, and like either way, if the win or the loss on any individual bet can actually impact your life, it was definitely too much money.
Yeah. I mean, the win side of it's interesting because that you can hit 50 to 1 in some of these NHL bets or some of the NBA stuff. You can get 50 to 1 on some wagers, it for sure, and that could have an impact. But should you be placing $500 or $100 on that or whatever? Probably not, right?
Right. Yeah. How did you learn that lesson? Like, I mean, that's one lesson. I'll say it on every call. In this life, we get the chance to learn from the good and the bad. The question is, are we smart enough to learn from both? Talk about some of those lessons that you've learned along the way, the hard lessons that you had to learn from. I mean, you just mentioned one. What were some of the other ones?
Yeah, I mean, there might be a perception that like I don't place bad wagers. I place bad wagers all the freaking time. I like to test out new markets. I like to test strategies, and just don't make it an amount that hurts. Make it an amount that keeps you honest, but make it so it doesn't hurt. And after you've had some success, that's a time to actually kind of explore those opportunities. And I place bad wagers all the time. I can't even count them. I couldn't even write a program to go find them because there'd be too many. It would run out of memory.
Yeah.
But
so
I guess
so talk about. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to go back to your initial question.
Yeah.
Now I forgot it.
Well, the question was like, talk about some of the mistakes that you learned the most from. Like what are some of the, and I'm not just talking about a single wager or whatever, but maybe like some like a strategy that you looked at or something that you went too deep on or something where maybe you walked before you ran, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've always started off so small that I don't think I've ever really hit any strategy too hard out of the gate and had like immediate remorse or regret for that bet. But dealing with a lot of different books, this is where it gets kind of tricky, is you don't know the house rules for all the books. And it's hard when you're betting on a game while it's happening to go research that. And I've definitely placed some wagers that if I had read the house rules, I would have known that was a bad wager and it lost. And I
Right.
didn't think it was a loser. And then I find out it is a loser, and I go read the house. You freaking idiot. Like, that is not a good feeling. And sometimes you do wager more on those because it seems like a lock, right? Lock.
Right.
As soon as you
Right.
think that, it's not.
Do you have a favorite book, Zach?
I love them all. The smaller the book, the better, because they're most likely to have infrastructure that is maybe delayed in updating lines, or less likely that they're running algorithms that detect betting trends that then cause you to be limited faster. I mean, don't get me wrong, that every book is probably running algorithms to follow betting trends for specific accounts and, match them up with others to then say, well, sorry, you don't get promos because you bet. Our computer has picked up that you bet in a way that we don't want to offer you promos anymore. And they'll just send you those emails. And it's kind of like, that's one where you print it out and frame it and put it on the wall, right?
Yeah. The trophies. There you go. Do you, sorry, and guys, everybody on the line here, fire some questions in the Q&A. There's a couple in there. They're pretty quick ones, but let's get some more here. While I ask a few more. Zach, what's more, the amount that you love to win or the amount that you hate to lose?
Oh, hating to lose, 100%. But that kind of goes back to, some of my earlier days in the I guess gambling world. I've always been a big gambler. I love to gamble. So coming into this space could be extremely troublesome, right? You find just they might have a gambling problem, or they think that this is just going to be gambling. This is not, and it might be really, really hard to succeed. But the reason I bring that up is when I turned 21 and, my uncle took me out to Vegas to kind of show me the ropes. I was like, this is gambling. This is fucking awesome. I love this. he bought the flight out there and, paid for the hotel. We stayed in the Four Queens on Fremont Street, and I flew out there with $300, and I'm like, let's fucking get it. So that's 3 tables I'm going to buy into, right? And then my weekend's over.
Right.
Yeah, no. So now, it started this thing with some buddies that I have, that we go out there every Super Bowl, and we would go out to bet on the game and gamble. And it turned into this competition kind of who would not lose the most. So it's really hard to explain, but it definitely came down to, like, if everybody's winning, it's fun. Sure. But if you're losing, at least your buddy lost more than you. And that goes back to your question of, like, what hurts more? It's like, well, yeah, losing the money. Like, I would rather just not have placed that wager that lost money than have the wager that actually won money.
So then how do you rationalize what we do here? Because, like so many of the strategies that we employ here at inplayLIVE, so many of them, your frequency of wins and losses, like you're going to lose more wagers than you win, knowing that you should make money in the process if everything goes the way they're supposed to. But with your hatred of losing, like, how do you do it in such a way where there's going to be stretches where you're going to lose, a bunch of bets in a row?
Yeah, it is tough. And so I aggregate everything, log it into spreadsheets every day. I don't know if maybe I lost you. I'm kind of frozen here, but maybe
you're
I'm
good
back now. All right. So yeah, I aggregate everything and kind of track it per day or per slate to see, am I winning or am I losing? And that's key. So then I look back at the day or the slate and I say, yep, that was a very successful day. And you can scroll through and you will find probably more losing wagers than winning wagers. It's just the ones that lost, they didn't have as big of an impact as the ones that won.
Right. So, and actually, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I was going to ask you about, do you analyze your own data? and you do, obviously. What was like, have you had times where you were surprised by your own data, like something that you thought, maybe was winning a bunch of money for you, and then you go look and you're like, oh shit, I'm actually, not really making that much here. Or maybe the flip side, one that you maybe underestimated how successful the strategy had been for you.
Yeah, it's the same wager actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's
What's
just at a
that?
different time.
Well,
Yeah.
let's talk about it. Let's hear that story.
Yeah, it was early NHL with this last season. We didn't really know what we were going to get, and we were using last year's data kind of combined and weighted with prior seasons, and it just wasn't working.
Right.
So, kind of pulled back on that. Once I looked at it, I realized, well, this really isn't working, even though it was still hitting and it was still paying pretty good in aggregate. It was losing me money, and just definitely pulled back on that, collected more data, let the season kind of settle in and phase out some of the older trends that we were putting into those calculations to determine if we want to wager that specific market or not. And then it was clicking, and later in the season, I'm like, well, this just went from being a wager that I hated placing all of a sudden to a wager that I freaking love.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the rest of us, like, we're all, like, we've got our blindfolds on and we're shooting darts on some of those. Like, you think if you don't have the data to analyze, you're just guessing.
Right. But
And so
you
you're
might
either going to
actually
take something
find
longer
something.
or not.
Yeah. I mean, you can throw darts and still find stuff. It's definitely true, but you also have to be conscious of making sure that you're having some sort of agnostic evaluation of if it was successful, or if you were just you were good, right? And you made a
Right.
good pick.
Yeah, right. Interesting. Wow, that's man, you've actually really opened my eyes to a couple things today about the importance of data and all those things. How often do you look at the data and you can instantly see like something that the books are clearly wrong on? Like last year, and I was talking to Razor and Coulter and a couple of guys about it earlier today. Last year, I was really big on power play points for about the first month of the year because the numbers were just massive. And I didn't have the data to prove it. But when you're getting plus 500, plus 550, plus 600 on a guy on the top power play unit of any team to get a point, like, I don't care if it's the worst power play unit in the league, I'm probably going to take that bet. And they scaled that back. The numbers started to drip down. And now, like, I don't know if anybody looked, but the power play numbers are god awful. Like, they're like you can't find better than plus 250 on anybody decent.
Wow.
They've really, really come down.
Wow, that's crazy, because they might only get 2 cracks at that for the whole game potentially, right?
Totally. Yeah. Like, the number is just, it's unusual. So it tells me that we did have a window that was definitely worth capitalizing on there, but once they figured it out. But is anything else jumping out at you? Like, are there any other things that you see from time to time, that certain areas where the books are more prone to be out to lunch than others?
It comes and goes really quick, like you kind of said with Bet365. Yeah, you're going to find markets, but just to anybody out there, don't look for them. They're gonna find you. I promise. They will find you when
Right.
they're that wrong. The number will 100% find you. If you go and try to find the number, you're gonna convince yourself to take a wager that is probably not a good wager.
Yeah, because you're already committed. If you start doing that, you're already committed to the wager, and then you're going to take the best number as opposed to just taking the number because it makes sense for the wager. And those are two completely different things.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like it's just a bunch of fluff that I'm saying there, but once you're looking at the books and live menus and really scrolling through stuff, and you have an arsenal and a tool belt of strategies that are working, you might start spotting some of these things, and I promise they're going to jump off the page.
Right.
You're going to then just take it or figure out if it is wrong, and try to capitalize on that as quickly as possible.
For sure.
Yeah, it's really hard to determine expected value on the fly in a live menu. But when you think about something that could be like a -110 wager or even money wager, if the book's algorithm, the live algorithm is like skewed 5% in one direction, that still doesn't give us an edge. But once you start looking at, something where maybe it's a 20% probability that this event would occur, and the book thinks it's only 10% or 15%, that actually moves the number so much that you can get expected value out of that. But how to determine that on the fly, it goes back to kind of the eye test and just having experience in the space. You're gonna see the numbers over and over again.
Yeah.
And you're gonna realize that is like where that's the right spot for it. And then when it's not, it's gonna jump out and you're gonna know. But unless you're watching the games and scanning the live menus while the game is on and really paying attention to everything and comparing, book A to book B, or, 3 books together, that's the most valuable thing you can do.
Yeah, for sure.
Even if you're not wagering, just to compare.
That's right. Just to watch it, right? Just to see what's there. Yeah. We've talked about some of the things that algorithms aren't going to account for. Razor loves games where the wind picks up in the second half and the algorithm doesn't take into account for that, or the wind completely dies in the second half and the algorithm doesn't take into account for that. Like the change in weather in football is one that there seems to be some value. If you're watching the game, you can see it. Matt, are there any other things that you see in other sports that the algorithm isn't getting?
Yeah, there was one big one. Lamar Jackson, I think it was last year, they had a really bad second half. They were losing. They needed a big comeback. And I can't remember what happened, but he disappeared off the field and the algorithm really couldn't account for, he had to go to the bathroom really bad.
Yeah.
Right. And I knew that. So I'm like, man, he's going to drop that number 2 and he's going to come back out for the 2-minute drill and just destroy this. I'm just kidding. There's no way I knew that, but that's just another example of like, the algorithm can't factor that in. You can't factor that in.
Last question, and then we'll let everybody out for recess here. You, what's the one thing, the one bit of advice that you would give to somebody who's pretty new at this? You're a week or 2 in, you're just getting your feet underneath you. You've got a one-on-one call with Zach. What do you tell him? What's the first bit of advice you give him?
Unit size. It's crucial. If you can't figure out what your unit size would be for a specific wager, you're not gonna succeed 100%. You might have a spurt of success, but in the long run, you will not. And yeah, it's basically all just money management.
Yeah.
And there's, like I said before, there's no one size fits all unit size for your bankroll. You need to figure that out on your own. If it's winning, keep doing it. And if it starts losing, you hit that 1 unit and you lost the unit on it, stop wagering in that game on that market 100%.
Yeah, that's great advice. It's so funny. Just about everybody says what you said about like unit prices and money management being one of, if not the most critical part of the difference at the end of the day from being really good at this and maybe not. But I love the way you articulated that, and just in the chat, hearing the way like Pacers reaction and some of the other guys, it's brilliant, Zach. Really, really good.
Yeah, definitely setting a threshold. It all boils down to setting a threshold. And I'm a huge, like I said before, I'm a gambler. I love to gamble. I'll gamble on anything at all. And setting that limit is actually something that I've learned from gambling, because I don't want to have that feeling at night or the next morning of, did I just really like fuck up my day, fuck up my week, fuck up my year? And having a limit is just so important to that.
Yeah, for sure. That's great advice. Zach, thanks for coming on today, man. And not just that, but on behalf of me and everybody else in the group, thanks for all the extra work you do. I learned, I knew you did a bunch of work. I didn't realize how much work you do. And I know you're not looking for any praise for that, but just really grateful, man, that you make this group a lot of money. And I know this is a labor of love for you. So thanks so much for doing that. There are a few guys in this group whose recommendations carry the weight that yours do. So good on you, man. This was a great call. And then last one in the rapid fire, outside of, Pacer and Kenny, who's the inplayLIVE member who's had the biggest impact on you in the way that you do things here?
Oh man, that's a really hard question, because you guys don't see me typing in the chat all the time, but just being in the pro side, every single person that's ever commented anything in the pro has had an impact on me. I read like all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So I can't say one person, but I do like Zanus's advice. It's actually funny. I went back and I'm like, man, when did I join inplayLIVE? And I found the email from Pace when I signed up, because he was trying to add me to the Facebook group, and he said, "Are you Zach Zanus?" Zanusi. I wanted to make sure I got the right person in the group. I'm like, who the fuck is this Zanusi guy?
That's great.
I just thought that was funny. I went and dug that up, the other day, because I was like, how long have I been a member here?
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, and one last thing, just one last closing thought, and I think one of the things that I hope everybody gathers from these chats that we've been having with some of the people who've had, some really great success here, is every one of them is not just willing to learn from others, they're dying to learn from others, right? Like the truth is, you're at the point, Zach, where you could ride what you already know and do this on your own for a long time and make really good money doing this. You could do it on your own. You're at that level, but you aren't satisfied with that level. You want to level up. You want to keep going. And the only way to do that is to learn from others. Is that a fair way of saying the way you look at this thing?
100%. Yep.
Yeah.
Leveling up, you want to add tools to your tool belt always. And you got to be 100% in. Whether that's 100% of your time commitment is a different story than actually committing headspace and having the willingness to succeed, and also still learn from others, right? If you can't do that, you're just not going to make it. And everybody knows, it's the cliche of what you put into this is what you're going to get out of it.
Yeah, there you go. Don't be a tool, be a tool belt. Closing thought. There we go. Yeah. Right on, guys. This was a great call. Zach, this was awesome, man. Like really, really good. You did a great job, and thanks for all the work you're doing, and thanks for taking the time today. And boys and girls on the podcast, thanks everybody for tuning in. We will see everybody next week, same time, same place. Later, guys.
See ya.